I stood in my father's mahogany office, watching the man who built Thompson Industries from nothing glare at me with cold disappointment. My sister Ashley sat smugly in the leather chair beside his desk, arms crossed, waiting for the apology she believed she deserved. "You will apologize to your sister for embarrassing her in front of the board, or you're suspended without pay until you do," my father declared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I looked between them both, then shrugged with surprising calm. "All right." The simplicity of my response froze them completely. 3 days earlier, I had arrived at Thompson Industries at 6 in the morning, just like every single day for the past 8 years since graduating from Northwestern's business school. The parking lot was empty except for the security guard's car and the lonely streetlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. I swiped my badge and walked through the familiar halls, breathing in the scent of fresh coffee from the break room that our cleaning crew always prepared before leaving. I built the digital marketing division from absolutely nothing, starting in a converted storage closet with one computer and a dream. 8 years later, that tiny department had become the company's most profitable wing, generating over $3 million in annual revenue. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for today, and I had spent weeks preparing a presentation that would showcase how my strategies had increased company revenue by 42% this year alone. Ashley stumbled into the conference room at 9:15, 15 minutes after the meeting had officially begun. She clutched a venti Starbucks cup like a lifeline, her usually pristine blonde hair slightly disheveled, and her designer blazer wrinkled from what appeared to be a hasty morning routine. The board members, including Harold Peterson, Margaret Chen, and Robert Sullivan, glanced up from their copies of the agenda as she shuffled to her assigned seat. She was supposed to co-present the financial projections that directly supported my marketing data, projections I had specifically provided to her exactly 2 weeks ago, with detailed explanations and supporting documentation. As I began discussing our digital campaign success rates, I noticed immediately that the numbers on her slides didn't match anything I had given her. When Harold Peterson, a silver-haired veteran of the business world with 30 years of experience, asked about the glaring discrepancy between her financial data and my marketing metrics, Ashley's face went completely white. She fumbled with her papers, knocked over her coffee cup, and then made a decision that changed everything between us forever. "Jonathan gave me incorrect figures on purpose to make me look bad," she blurted out, her voice cracking with false emotion. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every board member turned to stare at me with expressions ranging from confusion to disappointment. Margaret Chen, who had always been supportive of my work, frowned deeply and removed her reading glasses. Robert Sullivan actually pushed his chair back from the table, as if distancing himself from potential corporate drama. My father, CEO William Thompson, didn't even pause to consider the accusation or ask for clarification. His weathered face immediately hardened with judgment as he looked directly at me. "Jonathan, this is completely unacceptable behavior toward your sister," he announced in front of the entire board, his voice carrying the finality of a courtroom verdict. I felt my jaw drop as the reality of what was happening crashed over me like ice water. "Dad, wait. Let me show you the original email chain. I have timestamps. I have documentation." Ashley interrupted before I could finish my sentence, her voice gaining confidence as she saw our father's support. "He's just trying to cover his tracks now. This is exactly what I was talking about, Dad. He's always trying to make me look incompetent." I opened my laptop with shaking hands, navigating to my email folders to pull up the original correspondence. The timestamps clearly showed I had sent her the correct figures on October 3rd, then followed up with clarification on October 5th when she claimed confusion, and then sent a final summary on October 7th after she requested one more review. Every piece of communication was documented, professional, and helpful, but Ashley had already poisoned the well. As I tried to present my evidence, she continued her performance, claiming I was attempting to manipulate the situation and that she had witnesses to my allegedly hostile behavior. What witnesses? I wanted to scream, but professional decorum kept my voice level. The meeting ended in chaos, with board members exchanging uncomfortable glances and my father promising to handle this family matter privately. I packed up my presentation materials in silence, watching 8 years of professional credibility crumble because of one lie told by someone I had trusted completely. That evening, I stayed late in my office, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. The building was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic outside. I decided to organize my files, partly to distract myself, and partly because I needed to understand how Ashley could have been so confident in her deception. What I discovered made my stomach turn. Going through email threads from the past 6 months, I found a systematic pattern of theft that I had somehow missed while focused on my actual work. Ashley had been forwarding my strategic plans to our father without any attribution, presenting my ideas as her own insights during their private meetings. Client testimonials praising Ashley's innovative approach were actually responses to campaigns I had designed and implemented entirely by myself. The Henderson manufacturing account that Ashley claimed to have secured, I found my original pitch deck in her computer folders, with my name simply deleted from the header. The social media strategy that supposedly demonstrated her digital expertise? It was a presentation I had created for her to review, which she then presented verbatim as her own work. But the final blow came when I accidentally discovered a voice recording on Ashley's phone. She had left the device in the conference room after the morning's disaster, and when I brought it to her office, it was still unlocked on a recording app. My thumb accidentally hit play, and I heard a conversation that shattered what remained of my trust in my family. "Dad, we need to talk about managing Jonathan's ego," Ashley's voice said through the phone's speaker. "He's getting too comfortable, thinking he's indispensable to this company." My father's familiar voice responded with a chuckle that sounded nothing like the warm laughter I remembered from childhood. "Don't worry about your brother, sweetheart. He's always been too soft for this business. When the time comes to make leadership changes, we'll make sure he understands his proper place in this organization." I dropped the phone onto her desk as if it had burned my fingers. The recording continued playing, revealing months of conversations about keeping Jonathan in line and ensuring he doesn't get too big for his britches. They discussed my work like it was a resource they owned, my innovations like they were family property to be distributed as they saw fit. Sitting in my car in the empty parking lot at midnight, I realized that my entire adult life had been built on a foundation of lies. The family that I had worked so hard to please, the sister I had mentored and protected, the father whose approval I had desperately sought, none of them had ever seen me as anything more than a useful tool to be discarded when convenient. Unable to sleep, I found myself back at the office at 2 a.m. The security guard, Frank Rodriguez, looked surprised but waved me through after checking my employee badge. "Working late again, Mr. Thompson?" he asked, with genuine concern in his voice. "Something like that, Frank," I replied, managing a tired smile. "Just need some quiet time to think." The office building felt completely different in the early morning hours. Without the usual bustle of phone calls, printer noise, and meeting chatter, I could actually hear the building itself. The gentle hum of the heating system, the distant rumble of highway traffic, the occasional creak of settling walls. Walking through these halls that I had helped build, I remembered every late night, every weekend spent developing strategies that had literally saved this company during the economic uncertainty of 2020 and 2021. When the pandemic hit and forced businesses to pivot or die, my digital marketing strategies had been the lifeline that kept Thompson Industries afloat. While other companies in our sector laid off employees and closed their doors, we thrived because I had spent 2 years before the crisis building our online presence and developing remote client relationship protocols. Settling into my office chair, I opened my private files and began a systematic review of my access permissions throughout the company's digital infrastructure. What I discovered was both sobering and empowering. As the head of digital marketing, I had administrative access to virtually everything that kept Thompson Industries running in the modern business world. Social media accounts for Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. I controlled all of them. The company website, including the back-end content management system and client portal, all under my administrative authority. Email marketing platforms that sent automated campaigns to over 12,000 subscribers, completely under my control. Even the customer relationship management system that tracked every client interaction and project status, I was the primary administrator. This realization led me to dig deeper into our client relationships, and what I found was staggering. Pulling up contract after contract, I discovered that 78% of Thompson Industries' current revenue came from clients who had specifically requested to work with me personally. Companies like Hartwell Manufacturing had clauses in their service agreements that explicitly stated their contracts were contingent on continued collaboration with Jonathan Thompson and his digital marketing team. Genesis Tech Solutions, our second largest client, had renewed their annual contract 3 months ago, with a personal note from their CEO, David Chang, stating that Jonathan's innovative approach and personal attention to detail were the primary reasons they chose Thompson Industries over 3 competitor bids. Cooper Retail had actually increased their monthly retainer by 30%, specifically to secure additional hours of my personal consultation time. But as I continued reviewing files, a much darker pattern began to emerge. Hidden in subfolder after subfolder, I found evidence of financial irregularities that made my blood run cold. Ashley had been systematically billing personal expenses to client accounts, categorizing them as legitimate business costs. Spa visits to the luxury Serenity Day Spa downtown were marked as client entertainment. Designer clothing purchases from Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue were labeled as professional wardrobe expenses. Even her monthly rent for her upscale apartment in the Riverside district was being charged to the company as temporary office space rental. The amounts were staggering, over $63,000 in the past year alone. But Ashley's financial misconduct was nothing compared to what I discovered about my father's activities. Going through 3 years of client billing records, with a forensic accountant's attention to detail, I uncovered a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that had been operating right under everyone's noses, including mine. The system worked like this. Clients would pay retainer fees for premium service packages, but William would provide them with basic service levels while pocketing the difference. He had created a separate bank account, supposedly for emergency business expenses, where these stolen funds were deposited. Over 36 months, he had systematically stolen nearly $215,000 from clients who trusted our family business. The most damaging discovery came in a folder labeled Insurance Recovery 2021, after a minor electrical fire in our building's 3rd floor had caused smoke damage to several offices. My father and Ashley had worked together to defraud our insurance company. They provided fake receipts for expensive computer equipment that had never been damaged, inflated repair costs for cosmetic issues, and even claimed productivity losses for departments that hadn't been affected by the incident. The insurance payout had been 3 times the actual damage amount, nearly $90,000 in fraudulent claims. I found emails between Ashley and William discussing how to maximize this opportunity and ensure they didn't leave money on the table. They had treated an unfortunate accident as a chance to steal from the insurance company that had faithfully covered our business for over a decade. Sitting in my dark office at 4 a.m, surrounded by evidence of crimes committed by the 2 people I had trusted most in the world, I realized I wasn't just facing a family conflict or workplace dispute. I was looking at felony fraud, embezzlement, and insurance scams that could result in serious prison time for both my father and sister. The weight of this knowledge settled on my shoulders like a heavy blanket. These weren't just people who had treated me unfairly, they were criminals who happened to share my DNA. The business I had devoted my adult life to building was essentially a criminal enterprise disguised as a family company. As dawn began to break through my office windows, painting the walls with pale orange light, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be complicit in their crimes anymore, and I wasn't going to continue being their victim. I had evidence that could send them both to prison, access to systems that could destroy their business overnight, and client relationships that could ensure my own future success. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own destiny. The question now was what I planned to do with that power. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. Instead of the usual dread that had begun to characterize my daily routine, I felt calm and focused. I had spent the remaining early morning hours creating a detailed plan, and now it was time to execute it with surgical precision. My first stop was the office supply closet, where I gathered several large file boxes and a roll of packing tape. To anyone watching, It would look like I was simply organizing old files, a reasonable activity for someone in a senior position who dealt with massive amounts of project documentation. In reality, I was preparing to methodically document and preserve every piece of evidence I had discovered. Sarah Mitchell, my assistant for the past 4 years, noticed the boxes immediately when she arrived at 8:30. "Spring cleaning, Mr. Thompson?" she asked, with a knowing smile that suggested she suspected something more significant was happening. "Just organizing some old project files," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "Could you help me compile a comprehensive contact list of all our external business partners and professional contacts? Include email addresses, phone numbers, and key contact persons for each company we've worked with in the past 2 years." Sarah's expression grew more concerned. "Are you preparing for something specific? You've never asked for that kind of comprehensive list before." I paused in my sorting and looked at her directly. Sarah had been incredibly loyal, often staying late to help with urgent projects and consistently going above and beyond her job description. She had also witnessed firsthand how Ashley and William treated me, though she had always been too professional to comment directly. "Let's just say I'm preparing for some potential changes in our business relationships," I said carefully. "I want to make sure we have all our important contacts properly documented." Sarah nodded slowly, her expression suggesting she understood more than she was saying. "I'll have that ready for you by noon," she promised. While Sarah worked on the contact list, I spent my morning systematically backing up every piece of evidence to multiple secure locations. I uploaded encrypted files to 3 different cloud storage services, burned copies to physical DVDs that I placed in sealed envelopes, and created detailed printed reports that documented every fraudulent transaction with supporting evidence. At 11:30, I called my old friend, Marcus Webb, who had become one of Chicago's most respected employment and corporate attorneys after graduating from Harvard Law School. We had maintained our friendship over the years, occasionally meeting for lunch or attending Northwestern alumni events together. Marcus Webb's office. "This is Jennifer speaking." "Hi, Jennifer. This is Jonathan Thompson. I need to schedule an emergency consultation with Marcus today if possible. It's regarding a serious corporate legal matter." There was a pause as she checked his calendar. "Mr. Webb has a cancellation at 2 o'clock this afternoon. He can meet with you then if it's truly urgent." "It is. Please tell him I'll need at least 2 hours and that I'll be bringing substantial documentation." During my lunch break, I drove downtown to Marcus's law office, a sleek modern building in the financial district. His office occupied the 23rd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a spectacular view of Lake Michigan. Marcus greeted me with a firm handshake and genuine concern in his eyes. "Jonathan, you sounded stressed on the phone. What's going on?" For the next hour and 45 minutes, I methodically presented everything I had discovered. Marcus listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions and taking detailed notes. As a Harvard-trained attorney who specialized in corporate fraud cases, he immediately understood the severity of what I was showing him. "This isn't just workplace harassment or family dysfunction," he said gravely, reviewing the financial documents spread across his conference table. "What your father and sister have done constitutes multiple felonies, embezzlement, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and potentially racketeering if we can establish pattern and intent across state lines." Marcus explained my options with the thoroughness that had made him so successful in corporate law. I could file criminal complaints with the district attorney's office, pursue civil lawsuits for financial damages, seek whistleblower protection under federal statutes, or the nuclear option, go completely public with everything. "But before you make any irreversible decisions," Marcus warned, his expression serious, "you need to understand that pursuing this course of action will likely destroy your family's business and could result in significant prison sentences for both your father and sister. Are you emotionally prepared for those consequences?" I sat quietly for several minutes, looking out at the lake and considering his question. Was I prepared to potentially send my own family members to prison? Was I ready to destroy a business that had been my entire adult life? Could I live with the consequences of either action or inaction? "They've already destroyed our family relationship through their actions," I finally replied. "I'm not responsible for the consequences of their criminal behavior." I'm only responsible for deciding whether I'll continue to be a victim or start being a person who stands up for what's right. Marcus nodded approvingly. That's the right perspective. But I want you to sleep on this decision tonight. Tomorrow, if you're still committed to moving forward, we'll begin building a comprehensive legal strategy. That afternoon, I returned to the office and completed one final task. I composed my resignation letter, keeping it brief, professional, and completely free of accusations or emotional content. The letter simply stated that I was pursuing other opportunities and would provide 2 weeks' notice to ensure a smooth transition of my responsibilities. I printed the letter on company letterhead, signed it by hand, and placed it in a sealed white envelope with my father's name written on the front. Then I set it prominently in the center of my desk, where anyone entering my office would notice it immediately. As I prepared to leave for the day, I took one last look around the office that had been my professional home for 8 years. The awards on the walls representing campaigns I had created, the photographs from client events where I had built lasting business relationships, the plants Sarah had brought to brighten up the space, all of it felt like artifacts from someone else's life. My phone rang at 6:45 that evening. The caller ID showed my father's cell phone number. Jonathan, I need you to come to the office immediately. We have a family matter to discuss. What kind of matter, Dad? Just come to the office. Now. His tone carried the same authoritative weight it had held throughout my childhood, the voice of a man accustomed to immediate obedience from his son. As I drove back to Thompson Industries, I realized this was the confrontation that would define the rest of my relationship with my family. I knew exactly what my father intended to say, exactly how Ashley would position herself as the victim, and exactly how they expected me to respond. But for the first time in my adult life, I was going into a family confrontation with complete information, unlimited leverage, and absolute clarity about my own worth. They were about to discover that their compliant, people-pleasing son had become someone entirely different overnight. I didn't come to work the next morning. For the first time in 8 years, my parking space remained empty, while other employees began their daily routines. My office sat quiet and still, with only the resignation letter on my desk bearing silent witness to the decision I had made. Ashley arrived at her usual time around 10:15, expecting to find me already there, and ready to offer the apology our father had demanded. She had probably spent the morning preparing for her moment of triumph, imagining how she would graciously accept my submission and solidify her position as the family favorite once and for all. Instead, she found an empty workspace and an envelope that would shatter her illusions of control. I imagine her confusion as she stood in my office doorway, looking at my vacant chair and noticing that my computer was missing from the desk. The company laptop and cell phone sat powered off beside a small stack of building access cards and office keys. Everything had been wiped clean and reset to factory settings. She must have noticed the white envelope immediately. It was positioned deliberately in the center of the desk, like a beacon demanding attention. When she opened it and read the simple, professional resignation letter, I wonder if she understood immediately what had just happened, or if she needed several moments to process the reality. According to Sarah Mitchell, who later described the scene to me with barely concealed satisfaction, Ashley read the letter twice before the full implications hit her. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally something that looked very much like panic. She rushed to our father's office with the letter clutched in her hand like evidence of a crime. "Dad, Jonathan resigned. He actually quit." William Thompson read the letter while Ashley paced nervously behind his desk. His initial reaction was exactly what I had predicted: dismissive confidence, masking growing concern. "This is just a temper tantrum," he told Ashley. "He'll be back by Monday morning, begging for his job and ready to apologize properly." But as the morning progressed and my phone calls went straight to voicemail, his confidence began to waver. I had disconnected my work cell phone and changed my personal number, cutting off their most direct means of contact. My work laptop had been restored to its original settings, and my personal files had been completely removed from all company systems. By 11:30, the first client call arrived. Janet Morrison from Hartwell Manufacturing wanted to discuss the timeline for their upcoming product launch campaign, specifically requesting to speak with me directly about some modifications to our digital strategy. Ashley attempted to field the call herself, explaining that I was temporarily unavailable due to a scheduling conflict. Temporarily. Janet's voice carried immediate concern. Mr. Thompson, our contract specifically requires his personal involvement in all major campaign decisions. Are you telling me he's no longer with Thompson Industries? Ashley stumbled through an explanation about internal restructuring and temporary adjustments, but Janet wasn't satisfied. I need to speak with someone who can guarantee Jonathan Thompson's continued involvement in our account. Our agreement is very specific about this requirement. The second call came from David Chang at Genesis Tech Solutions, inquiring about expanding their social media presence for the fourth quarter. When he learned that I was unavailable for consultation, his tone shifted noticeably. We renewed our contract specifically because of Jonathan's expertise and personal attention to our account. If he's not available, we need to reconsider our arrangement. By noon, 4 more clients had called with similar concerns. When they learned that my availability was uncertain, each conversation ended with requests for emergency meetings to review their contractual obligations. Ashley found herself promising callbacks and scheduling sessions she had no idea how to conduct. At 2:15 in the afternoon, the phone rang with a call that made Ashley's blood turn to ice water. Thompson Industries. This is Ashley Thompson speaking. Hello, this is Maria Santos from Channel 7 News. I'm calling to verify some information for an investigative story we're planning to broadcast tonight. The story concerns allegations of financial fraud and insurance fraud at Thompson Industries. Do you have any comment on these allegations? Ashley's hand began shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. What allegations? I don't know what you're talking about. According to our sources, there's evidence of systematic embezzlement of client funds and fraudulent insurance claims, totaling over $300,000. We'd like to give your company an opportunity to respond before we air the segment. Ashley hung up the phone without another word and sprinted to her father's office, bursting through his door without knocking. Dad, there's a reporter calling about fraud allegations. They're planning to run a story tonight. William's face drained of all color. What did you tell them? Nothing. I hung up. But Dad, how would they know about? She stopped herself before finishing the sentence, but they both knew what she meant. That's when the horrible realization dawned on them both. When I had said all right to my father's ultimatum, I wasn't accepting defeat or agreeing to their terms. I was accepting that my relationship with my family was over, and I was prepared to act accordingly. They suddenly understood that I wasn't just some disgruntled employee who might badmouth the company to a few friends. As the person who had managed their entire digital presence for 8 years, I had the capability to destroy their reputation instantly with a single social media post that could reach thousands of potential clients, competitors, and industry contacts. William reached for his phone to call Derek Harrison, the company's longtime attorney. Derek was a nervous, detail-oriented man in his mid-50s who had handled Thompson Industries' legal matters for over 12 years. He generally dealt with contract reviews and minor employment issues, not criminal fraud investigations. Derek, we have an emergency situation. I need you here immediately. What kind of emergency, William? The kind that might end our business if we don't handle it correctly. How quickly can you get to the office? Derek arrived within 25 minutes. His usually neat appearance slightly disheveled from rushing across town. When William and Ashley explained about the news inquiry and my sudden departure, Derek's panic was immediate and visible. Please tell me you didn't post anything on social media, he said, his voice trembling as he spoke. Tell me there's nothing online about this situation. Ashley and William looked at each other with growing horror, realizing they had no idea what I had already shared or planned to share with the world. As the person who controlled all their social media accounts, website content, and digital communications, I possessed the power to destroy their business reputation with a few keystrokes. Derek frantically opened his laptop and began checking every digital platform associated with Thompson Industries. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all appeared normal on the surface. But as he dug deeper into their digital infrastructure, a much more terrifying reality emerged. Who has administrative access to your online accounts? Derek asked, though he probably already suspected the answer. Jonathan handles all of that, Ashley admitted quietly. What about your website, client management systems, email marketing platforms? All Jonathan, William said, his voice barely above a whisper. Derek's face went completely pale. Please tell me you have backup administrative access to your own company's digital systems. The silence in the room answered his question more clearly than words ever could. Derek Harrison's laptop screen flickered as he frantically navigated between browser tabs, checking every aspect of Thomson Industries' digital presence. What he discovered over the next hour would transform their family conflict into a full-scale business emergency that threatened the company's very survival. Your son didn't just run the digital marketing department, Derek said, his voice growing more strained with each discovery. He built and maintained the entire technological infrastructure that your business depends on. The company website, client portal, automated billing systems, email marketing platforms, even your internal communication networks. Everything runs through systems he created and controls. Ashley slumped into a chair, finally beginning to understand the scope of their dependency. But surely we have backup access, right? Emergency passwords or something? Derek shook his head grimly. Standard business practice would be to maintain backup administrative credentials, but it appears that Jonathan was given complete autonomy over digital operations. Without his cooperation, you're essentially locked out of your own company's technological infrastructure. William tried calling me repeatedly, but each attempt went directly to voicemail. The automated message was brief and professional. You've reached Jonathan Thompson. Please leave a message, and I'll return your call as soon as possible. But we all knew that callback wasn't coming. Sarah Mitchell observed this growing chaos from her desk outside my former office. When Ashley demanded that she provide passwords and access codes for my systems, Sarah calmly explained the reality of the situation. I was only given access to specific functions under Mr. Thompson's direct supervision, Sarah said with professional detachment. I can schedule appointments, handle correspondence, and manage basic administrative tasks, but I don't have administrator privileges for any of the digital systems. Ashley's frustration boiled over. Then, what good are you? Why didn't you insist on having full access? Sarah's response was delivered with the kind of quiet dignity that comes from years of watching entitled behavior. Because Mr. Thompson was responsible for those systems, and he managed them exceptionally well. It never occurred to anyone that he might need to be replaced because no one expected him to be driven away. At 3:45 in the afternoon, their worst fears began materializing. The company website went offline, replaced by a simple maintenance page that read, "Site temporarily unavailable for system updates. For immediate assistance with existing projects, please contact Jonathan Thompson directly." My personal email address and phone number were prominently displayed. Derek refreshed the page several times, hoping it was a temporary glitch, but the maintenance message remained stubbornly persistent. He's taken the website offline, Derek announced unnecessarily, since they could all see the screen. An hour later, their automated client billing system stopped functioning entirely. Monthly invoices that should have been generated and sent automatically simply failed to appear. The system that handled recurring payments, project milestone billing, and retainer fee processing had been quietly disabled. But the most devastating blow came when their client portal, the system that allowed customers to review project progress, download files, and communicate with project teams, began displaying error messages, directing users to contact me personally for access. "This is sabotage," Ashley declared, though her voice lacked conviction. Even she was beginning to realize that I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply withdrawing my services and taking my work with me. Derek spent 2 hours on the phone with the company's business insurance provider, only to discover another nightmare. Their cybersecurity insurance policy required them to maintain specific digital safeguards and backup systems. With me gone, and no one else having administrative access to critical systems, they were potentially in violation of their coverage requirements. "If we suffer a data breach or cyber attack while these vulnerabilities exist," Derek explained, "our insurance company might refuse to cover the damages. We could be looking at enormous financial liability." As evening approached, The true scope of their predicament became undeniable. Thompson Industries had become completely dependent on systems I controlled, relationships I had built, and expertise I had developed. Without my cooperation, they couldn't bill clients, update their website, process new leads, or even access their own customer database. Ashley attempted to call me 18 times throughout the day. She sent text messages ranging from confused to angry to desperate. She even tried reaching out through social media platforms, but I had blocked her on every channel. At 6:30, William finally swallowed his pride and called my personal phone. I answered on the first ring. "Hello, Dad. Son. We need to talk." His voice carried none of its usual authority instead. It sounded tired and uncertain. "I'm listening. This situation has gotten completely out of hand. The website, the billing systems, the clients calling, 'We need you to come back tomorrow so we can work this out properly.'" "What situation?" I asked, my voice genuinely curious. "I resigned from my position and removed my access to company systems. Isn't that standard procedure when someone leaves a job?" "You know exactly what situation I'm talking about. The website is down. Clients can't access their files. Our billing system isn't working." "Oh, that situation," I replied calmly. "What would you like to discuss about it?" The pause that followed was telling. For the first time in our relationship, William found himself in the position of asking for something instead of demanding it. He had no leverage, no authority, and no way to force my compliance. "What do you want, Jonathan? What will it take to fix this?" "I want to have an honest conversation about our family's business practices and my role in this company moving forward. Are you prepared to have that conversation?" Another long pause. "Yes." "Good. I'll meet with you tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock in the main conference room. I'll be bringing my attorney, Marcus Webb, and I expect Derek Harrison to be present as well. We're going to discuss the terms under which I might consider returning to Thompson Industries." "Your attorney?" William's voice rose slightly. "Why do you need an attorney for a family discussion?" "Because this stopped being a family matter the moment you chose to publicly humiliate me in front of the board rather than listen to my side of the story. From now on, all business discussions will be conducted with proper legal representation." I hung up before he could respond, leaving my father to contemplate a reality he had never imagined. His son, holding all the power in their relationship, and being completely willing to use it. The main conference room at Thompson Industries had never felt more like a courtroom than it did at 8 o'clock that evening. William, Ashley, and Derek Harrison sat on one side of the polished oak table, looking like defendants awaiting judgment. Marcus Webb and I occupied the opposite side, with Marcus's leather briefcase and organized documents, suggesting we were prepared for serious negotiations. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that even the seating arrangement felt different. William, who usually commanded meetings from the head of the table, had positioned himself defensively beside Derek, while Ashley sat quietly with her hands folded, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "Before we begin," Marcus said, opening his briefcase with deliberate formality, "my client has prepared comprehensive documentation of certain financial irregularities he discovered while organizing his departure from the company." He placed a thick manila folder on the table between us. "We'll address those findings in detail momentarily." I looked directly at my father, meeting his eyes with a steadiness I had never felt before. "For 8 years, I've given this company everything I had to offer. I've worked weekends, holidays, and vacations. I've missed family gatherings, social events, and personal opportunities. I built technological systems that transformed us from a struggling local business into a profitable regional leader. I developed client relationships that generate millions in annual revenue." Ashley started to interrupt, but Marcus raised his hand politely. "Please allow him to finish his statement. In return for my dedication and success," I continued, "I've been systematically undermined, had my work stolen, and presented as someone else's achievements, been excluded from major decisions about my own department, and finally suspended for refusing to apologize for Ashley's public incompetence. That dynamic ends tonight." I slid a document across the table. "This is my proposal for returning to Thompson Industries. I'm willing to resume my responsibilities as Chief Operating Officer, with complete authority over all digital operations, a 75% salary increase, and 40% ownership stake in the company. William's eyes widened as he read the terms. 40% ownership? Jonathan, that's fair compensation for the value I've created and the risks I've taken, I finished. Or I walk away permanently, and you can explain to Hartwell Manufacturing, Genesis Tech Solutions, Cooper Retail, and 16 other major clients why their service contracts are being terminated due to breach of performance agreements. Ashley finally found her voice, though it shook with barely controlled anger. You can't blackmail us. This is supposed to be our family business. Marcus reached for the manila folder, his expression remaining professionally neutral. Actually, let's discuss blackmail and family businesses. He opened the folder, revealing financial records, bank statements, and insurance documents organized with legal precision. These documents show systematic fraud totaling over $260,000 committed by members of this family over the past 3 years. Derek Harrison's face went completely white as he recognized what he was looking at. Years of legal experience had taught him to spot serious criminal evidence, and the documentation Marcus was displaying represented multiple felony charges. For the next 30 minutes, Marcus methodically presented evidence of every fraudulent transaction Ashley had made, every client fund William had embezzled, and every aspect of their insurance fraud scheme. He spoke with the calm professionalism of someone presenting facts rather than accusations, making the evidence even more damning through his understated delivery. William attempted to justify some of the questionable expenses, claiming they were legitimate business costs that had been miscategorized. Ashley insisted she hadn't understood the difference between personal and business expenses, portraying herself as naive rather than criminal. But Marcus's documentation was overwhelming, complete with email threads, bank records, and insurance communications that showed clear intent to defraud. The evidence shows a pattern of deliberate criminal activity, Marcus concluded. Wire fraud, embezzlement, insurance fraud, and conspiracy charges could result in significant prison sentences for both defendants. The silence in the room was deafening. Derek Harrison was furiously taking notes while calculating potential legal exposure. Ashley looked like she might be sick. William stared at the documents, as if he could make them disappear through sheer will. Finally, William asked quietly, "What do you want from us, Jonathan?" "I want justice," I replied. "And I want change." "What kind of justice?" "Full restitution of every penny stolen from clients and insurance companies. Implementation of independent financial oversight to prevent future fraud." Ashley's immediate demotion to an entry-level position where she can actually learn the skills she should have developed years ago, and a formal acknowledgement that this company's success depends on competence and character, not family relationships. Ashley's control finally snapped. "You're destroying our family over money. How can you be so cold?" I looked at her with genuine sadness rather than anger. "Ashley, you destroyed our family relationship when you decided to steal my work, lie about my character, and participate in criminal fraud. I'm just refusing to pretend that none of it happened." Marcus placed another document on the table. "Mr. Thompson has 2 options. He can accept these terms and begin making restitution while implementing proper business practices, or he can decline and face public exposure of all criminal activity along with appropriate legal consequences." "You're really prepared to send your own family to prison?" William asked. "I'm prepared to stop being complicit in criminal activity and workplace abuse," I answered. "The choice between prison and redemption is entirely yours to make." Derek Harrison had been reviewing the evidence while we talked, and his professional assessment was clear from his expression. "William, Ashley, I strongly recommend you accept these terms. The evidence Mr. Webb has presented would almost certainly result in criminal convictions if prosecuted. This offer represents your best possible outcome." William Thompson looked around the table at his daughter, his attorney, and finally at his son, who had become a stranger overnight. The man who had built a company from nothing was being forced to rebuild his relationship with his own family on terms dictated by someone he had consistently undervalued. At 9:47 that evening, he signed the agreement. William Thompson's signature on the contract at 9:47 p.m. was more than just ink on paper. It was the moment our family began the long, difficult process of becoming honest with each other for the first time in years. His hand trembled slightly as he wrote his name, and I realized he wasn't just signing a business agreement but acknowledging that his son had become someone he didn't recognize and couldn't control. Ashley refused to look at anyone as the meeting concluded, staring at the conference table as if it held answers to questions she wasn't ready to ask. Derek Harrison immediately began discussing implementation timelines for the financial oversight systems and restitution plans that would keep everyone out of prison. Over the following weeks, Thompson Industries underwent a transformation that went far beyond organizational charts and ownership percentages. I implemented comprehensive financial controls with monthly reviews by an independent accounting firm. Every expense, over $500, now required dual approval and supporting documentation. Client funds were segregated into protected accounts that couldn't be accessed for personal use. Ashley was reassigned to a junior marketing coordinator position, where she worked under the direct supervision of Sarah Mitchell, who had been promoted to department manager. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that my former assistant was now training my sister in basic professional skills that Ashley should have learned years earlier. Initially, Ashley resented every aspect of her new reality. She complained about the reduced salary, the loss of status, and the requirement to actually learn digital marketing fundamentals through structured training programs. But gradually, something unexpected happened. She began to discover capabilities she had never developed when success was simply handed to her. 3 months into her new role, Ashley successfully completed her first independent client project, a social media campaign for a local restaurant chain. The campaign generated a 23% increase in weekend traffic over 6 weeks. When she presented the results to our monthly team meeting, her pride was genuine rather than manufactured. For the first time in her professional life, she had earned something through her own effort and skill. The company's revenue increased by 31% during my first quarter as Chief Operating Officer. New clients began approaching us specifically because of our reputation for ethical business practices and innovative digital strategies. Industry publications featured articles about Thompson Industries' remarkable transformation under new leadership, describing our company as an example of how family businesses could modernize and thrive. But the most significant changes occurred in our actual family relationships. William struggled initially with our new dynamic, occasionally falling back into old patterns of authoritative demands, followed by surprised confusion, when I responded as an equal rather than a subordinate. However, he gradually began to understand the difference between commanding obedience and earning respect. 6 months after that confrontational evening in the conference room, Ashley approached me privately during a company retreat. We were standing on the deck of the Lakeside Conference Center, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and orange. "I need to apologize to you," she said quietly, "and not because Dad is making me do it this time." I turned to study her face, looking for signs of the manipulation that had characterized our relationship for so long. Instead, I saw genuine remorse and something that looked like emotional maturity. "I was terrified that you were better than me," she continued. "So I tried to tear you down instead of building myself up. I stole your work, undermined your reputation, and helped Dad treat you like an employee rather than a son. I was scared, selfish, and completely wrong." Her apology was more detailed and emotionally honest than any conversation we had shared in years. She took responsibility for specific actions, acknowledged the impact on my career and personal well-being, and didn't make excuses or attempt to minimize her behavior. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I accept your apology, but rebuilding trust is going to take time and consistent actions, not just words." Ashley nodded, understanding that forgiveness was a process rather than an event. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, and I'm committed to becoming someone worthy of your respect." Over the following months, she proved that commitment through reliable professional performance and gradual personal growth. She completed advanced digital marketing certifications, attended leadership development workshops, and began treating colleagues with the respect she had never shown before. The most profound change occurred in William's perspective on family and business. One evening, as we reviewed quarterly reports in his office, he looked up from the financial statements and said quietly, "I almost lost the most valuable thing about this company, because I was afraid of admitting I needed you." "You didn't need me because I'm your son," I replied. "You needed me because I'm competent at what I do. I should have been valued for my contributions, not tolerated because of genetics." William considered this for several minutes before responding. "You're right. I confused family loyalty with business value. And in doing so, I almost destroyed both our family and our business." That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between us, one based on mutual respect rather than traditional hierarchy. William began consulting with me on major strategic decisions, not because I was his son, but because I had proven my judgment and expertise. In return, I began sharing insights and concerns openly, rather than walking on eggshells to avoid conflict. A year after the confrontation that changed everything, Thompson Industries won the Regional Business Ethics Award from the Chicago Chamber of Commerce. Standing at the podium accepting the recognition, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to that moment. This award represents more than ethical business practices, I told the audience of business leaders and community members. It represents the principle that respect must be earned through character and competence, regardless of family, relationships, or traditional hierarchies. In my acceptance speech, I announced the establishment of the Thompson Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting young professionals who face workplace discrimination, family manipulation, or ethical dilemmas in their careers. "Everyone deserves to be valued for who they are and what they contribute," I explained. "No one should have to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity." Sarah Mitchell, who had completed her MBA while working as our department manager, became the Foundation's first program coordinator. Ashley, after demonstrating 2 full years of ethical behavior and professional competence, was appointed as the Foundation's financial administrator, a role she approached with the humility and attention to detail that came from understanding the real consequences of financial misconduct. Marcus Webb remained my attorney and closest advisor, often observing that this case had taught him the difference between legal victory and personal transformation. "You could have destroyed them completely," he reflected during one of our quarterly legal reviews. "Instead, you gave them the opportunity to become better people." But the most meaningful transformation was internal. I learned that true strength isn't about dominating others or winning at any cost. It's about knowing your worth, establishing boundaries, and refusing to accept treatment that diminishes your value. Family relationships, like all meaningful connections, must be built on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than obligation and tradition. The greatest victory wasn't crushing my opponents, but transforming a toxic family dynamic into something healthy and productive for everyone involved. Sometimes the most loving action you can take is to stop enabling destructive behavior and force people to confront the consequences of their choices. I discovered that I didn't need to choose between loving my family and respecting myself. I could do both by refusing to participate in relationships that required me to compromise my integrity or accept less than I deserved. This boundary didn't destroy our family, it saved us by forcing everyone to build something better together. Looking back, I realized that my quiet all right in response to my father's ultimatum wasn't submission or defeat. It was acceptance. Acceptance that I was finally ready to stop being a victim and start being someone who stood up for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. The business thrived because we learned to value competence over connections, character over convenience, and truth over temporary comfort. Our family relationships improved because they became based on respect earned through actions rather than compliance demanded through manipulation. 3 years later, as I watch Ashley mentor new employees with patience and genuine concern for their development, as I see William seek input from his team rather than simply issuing orders, and as our company continues growing through ethical practices and genuine excellence, I understand that the most important lesson wasn't about business or family dynamics. It was about the transformative power of refusing to accept less than you deserve, while still maintaining hope that people can change when given clear boundaries and genuine consequences. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to discover who they're capable of becoming when they can no longer rely on manipulation, privilege, or other people's compliance. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family or close relationships expected you to compromise your values or accept unfair treatment just to keep the peace? How did you handle it? Or if you're facing something similar now, what's holding you back from setting the boundaries you know you need? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to stand up for themselves. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family manipulation and workplace challenges. Share this video with anyone who might be struggling with similar situations. Sometimes we all need to hear that we're not alone in these difficult family dynamics. Thank you for listening. And remember that your worth isn't determined by other people's approval, but by your own character, competence, and willingness to stand up for what's right.